The Secret Doctrine by Elena Petrovna Blavatsky, a facsimile of the original edition of 1888, printed by the Cunningham Press, Alhambra, California. Book 2, Part 1, Anthropogenesis, stanzas translated with commentaries, from the Secret Book of John. Stanza 5 continued, verse 21. When the race became old, the old waters mixed with the fresher waters. The old primitive race merged in the second race and became one with it. Verse 21 continued. When the drops became turbid, they vanished and disappeared in the new stream, in the hot stream of life. The outer of the first became the inner of the second. This is the mysterious process of transformation and evolution of mankind. The material of the first forms, shadowy, ethereal, and negative, was drawn or absorbed into, and thus became the complement of the forms of the second race. The commentary explains this by saying that, as the first race was simply composed of the astral shadows of the creative progenitors, having of course neither astral nor physical bodies of their own, this race never died. Its, quote, men, unquote, melted gradually away, becoming absorbed in the bodies of their own sweat-born progeny, more solid than their own. The old form vanished and was absorbed by, disappeared in the new form, more human and physical. There was no death in those days of a period more blissful than the Golden Age, but the first or parent material was used for the formation of the new being, to form the body and even the inner or lower principles or bodies of the progeny. Verse 21 continued. The old wing became the shadow, and the shadow of the wing. When the shadow retires, that is, when the astral body becomes covered with more solid flesh, man develops a physical body. The wing, or ethereal form that produced its shadow and image, became the shadow of the astral body and its progeny. The expression is queer, but original. As there may be no occasion to refer to this mystery later, it is as well to point out at once the dual meaning contained in the Greek myth bearing upon this particular phase of evolution. It is found in the several variants of the allegory of Leda and her two sons Castor and Pollux, which variants have each a special meaning. Thus in Book 11 of the Odyssey, Leda is spoken of as the spouse of Tyndarus, who gave birth by her husband two sons of valiant heart, Castor and Pollux. Jupiter endows them with a marvelous gift and privilege. They are semi-immortal. They live and die each in turn and every alternate day, eterneroi. Note, see Odyssey 11, 298-305, and the Iliad 3, 243. End of note. As the Tyndaridae, the twin brothers are an astronomical symbol and stand for day and night. Their two wives, Phoebe and Hylasira, the daughters of Apollo, or the sun, personifying the dawn and the twilight. Note, see Chant Cypriaque, Ovid, Fast, etc. See Deschamps' Mythologie de la Grèce Antique. End of note. Again, in the allegory where Zeus is shown as the father of the two heroes, born from the egg to which Leda gives birth, the myth is entirely theogonical. It relates to that group of cosmic allegories in which the world is described as born from an egg, for Leda assumes in it the shape of a white swan when uniting herself to the divine swan. Note, see Brahma Kalahamsa in Book 1, Stanza 3, page 78. End of note. Leda is the mythical bird, then, to which, in the tradition of various peoples of the Aryan race, are attributed various ornithological forms of birds which all lay golden eggs. Note, see Descartes' Mythologie, page 652. End of note. In the Kalevala, the epic poem of Finland, the beauteous daughter of the ether, the water mother, creates the world in conjunction with a duck, another form of the swan or goose, Kalahansa, who lays 6 golden eggs and the 7th an egg of iron in her lap. But the variant of the lead allegory, which has a direct reference to mystic man, is found in Pindar only, with a slight reference to it in the Homeric hymns. Castor and Pollux are in it no longer the Dioscuri of Apollodorus, 3:10-7, but became the highly significant symbol of the dual man, the mortal and the immortal. Not only this, but as will now be seen, they are also the symbol of the third race and its transformation from the animal man into a god-man with only an animal body. Pindar shows Leda uniting herself in the same night to her husband and also to the father of the gods, Zeus. Thus Castor is the son of the mortal, Pollux the progeny of the immortal. In the allegory made up for the occasion, it is said that in a riot of vengeance against the Aphrodites, Pollux kills Lynceus, of all mortals he whose sight is the most penetrating. But Castor is wounded by Idas, he who sees and knows. Zeus puts an end to the fight by hurling his thunderbolt and killing the last two combatants. Pollux finds his brother dying. Note: Castor's tomb was shown in Sparta in days of old, says Pausanias 3:13-1. And Plutarch says that he was called at Argos, the demi-mortal or demi-hero. Mysargagetas. See Plutarch, Questions Graeci 23, end of note. In his despair he calls upon Zeus to slay him also. "Thou canst not die altogether," answers the masters of the gods. "Thou art of a divine race." But he gives him the choice. Pollux will either remain immortal, living eternally in Olympus, or, if he would share his brother's fate in all things, he must pass half his existence underground, and the other half in the golden heavenly abodes. This semi-immortality, which is also to be shared by Castor, is accepted by Pollux, and thus the twin brothers live alternately, one during the day and the other during the night. Is this a poetical fiction only, an allegory, one of those solar myth interpretations, higher than which no modern Orientalist seems able to soar? Indeed, it is much more. Here we have an allusion to the egg-born third race, the first half of which is mortal, that is, unconscious in its personality and having nothing within himself to survive, and the latter half of which becomes immortal in its individuality by reason of its fifth principle being called to life by the informing gods, and thus connecting the monad with this earth. Note: the monad is impersonal and a god per se, albeit unconscious on this plane. For divorced from its third, often called fifth principle, manas, which is the horizontal line of the first manifested triangle trinity, it can have no consciousness or perception of things on this earthly plane. The highest sees through the eye of the lowest in the manifested world. Purusha, spirit, remains blind without the help of prakriti, matter, in the material spheres, and so does Atma Buddhi without manas. End of note. This is Pollux, while Castor represents the personal mortal man, an animal of not even a superior kind, when unlinked from the divine individuality. Twins truly, yet divorced by death forever, unless Pollux, moved by the voice of twinship, bestows on his less favoured mortal brother a share of his own divine nature, thus associating him with his own immortality. Such is the occult meaning of the metaphysical aspect of the allegory. The widely spread modern interpretation of it, so celebrated in antiquity, Plutarch tells us, as a symbolical of brotherly devotion, namely, that it was an image borrowed from the spectacle of nature, is weak and inadequate to explain the secret meaning. Besides the fact that the moon with the Greeks was feminine in exoteric mythology and can therefore hardly be regarded as Castor, and at the same time be identified with Diana, ancient symbologists who held the sun, the king of all sidereal orbs, as the visible image of the highest deity, would not have personified it by Pollux, a demigod only. Note: this strange idea and interpretation are accepted by Descartes in his Mythologie de la Grèce antique. Castor and Pollux, he says, are nothing but the sun and moon, conceived as twins, he says. The sun, the immortal and powerful being that disappears every evening from the horizon and descends under the earth as though he would make room for the fraternal orb which comes to life with the night, is Pollux, who sacrifices himself for Castor. Castor, who, inferior to his brother, owes to him his immortality. For the moon, says Theophrastus, is only another but feebler son, unquote from Deventis 17. See the Karma, page 655, end of note. If from Greek mythology we pass to the Mosaic allegories and symbolism, we shall find a still more striking corroboration of the same tenet under another form. Unable to trace in Genesis the egg-born, we shall still find there unmistakably the androgynes and the first three races of the secret doctrine hidden under most ingenious symbology in the first 4 chapters of Genesis. The divine hermaphrodite. An impenetrable veil of secrecy was thrown over the occult and religious mysteries taught after the submersion of the last remnant of the Atlantean race some 12,000 years ago, lest they should be shared by the unworthy and so desecrated. Of these sciences, several have now become exoteric, such as astronomy, for instance, in its purely mathematical and physical aspect. Hence their dogmas and tenets, being all symbolized and left to the sole guardianship of parable and allegory, have been forgotten, and their meaning has become perverted. Nevertheless, one finds the hermaphrodites in the scriptures and traditions of almost every nation, and why such unanimous agreement if the statement is only a fiction? It is this secrecy which led the fifth race to the establishment, or rather the re-establishment of the religious mysteries, in which ancient truths might be taught to the coming generations under the veil of allegory and symbolism. Behold the imperishable witness to the evolution of the human races from the divine, and especially from the androgynous race, the Egyptian Sphinx, that riddle of the ages. Divine wisdom, incarnating on earth and forced to taste of the bitter fruit of personal experience of pain and suffering, generated under the shade of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, a secret first known only to the Elohim, the self-initiated higher gods on earth only. Note. See Book of Enoch. In the Book of Enoch we have Adam, the first divine androgyne, separating into man and woman and becoming Yah, Heva, in one form or race, and Cain and Abel, male and female, in its other form or race. The double-sexed Jehovah, an echo of its Aryan prototype Brahma Vak. Note. Adam Kadmon is, like Brahma and Mars, the symbol of the generative and creative power typifying water and earth, an alchemical secret. It takes earth and water to create a human soul, said Moses. Mars is the Hindu Mangala, the planet Mars, identical with Kartikeya, the war god born of Garmaja, Shiva's sweat, and of the earth. He is Lohita, the red, like Brahma also and Adam. The Hindu Mars is, like Adam, born from no woman and mother. With the Egyptians, Mars was the primeval generative principle, and so are Brahma in exoteric teaching and Adam in the Kabbalah. End of note. After which come the third and fourth root races of mankind, that is to say, races of men and women, or individuals of opposite sexes, no longer sexless semi-spirits and androgynes, as were the two races which precede them. Note on Abel. Abel is Chebel, meaning pains of birth, conception. End of note. This fact is hinted at in Anthropogeny. It is found in fable and allegory, in myth and revealed scriptures, in legend and tradition, because of all the great mysteries inherited by initiates from hoary antiquity, this is one of the greatest. It accounts for the bisexual element found in every creative deity, in Brahma Viraj Vak, as in Adam Jehovah Eve, also in Cain Jehovah Abel. End of note. Note, Abel is Chebel, meaning pains of birth, conception. Also in Cain Jehovah Abel. For the book of the generations of Adam does not even mention Cain and Abel, but says only male and female created he them, and called their name Adam. Chapter 5, verse 5. Then it proceeds to say, and Adam begat a son in his own likeness, after his image, and called his name Set. Verse 3. After which he begets other sons and daughters, thus proving that Cain and Abel are his own allegorical permutations. Adam stands for the primitive human race, especially in its cosmosidereal sense. Not so, however, in its theoanthropological meaning. The compound name of Jehovah, or Jehovah, meaning male life and female life, first androgynous, then separated into sexes, is used in this sense in Genesis from chapter 5 onwards. As the author of the Source of Measures says on page 159, the two words of which Jehovah is composed make up the original idea of male-female as the birth originators. For the Hebrew letter Jod was the membrum virile and Hova was Eve, the mother of all living, or the procreatrix, earth and nature. The author believes, therefore, that it is seen that the perfect one, the perfect female circle, or yoni 20612, numerically, as originator of measures, takes also the form of birth origin, as hermaphrodite 1, hence the phallic form and use. Precisely. Only the phallic form and use came long ages later, and the first and original meaning of Enos, the son of Seth, was the first race born in the present usual way from man and woman, for Seth is no man but a race. Before him humanity was hermaphrodite. While Seth is the first result, psychologically, after the fall, he is also the first man, hence his son Enos is referred to as the son of man, vid infra. Seth represents the later third race. To screen the real mystery name of Ein Sof, the boundless and endless no thing, the Kabbalists have brought forward the compound attribute appellation of one of the personal creative Elohim, whose name was Yah and Jah, the letters I or J or Y being interchangeable, or Jehovah, that is male and female, Jah-Eve, an hermaphrodite, or the first form of humanity, the original Adam of earth, not even Adam Kadmon, whose mind-born son is the earthly Jehovah mystically. Note, Jod in the Kabbalah has for symbol the hand, the forefinger and the lingam, while numerically it is the perfect one, but it is also the number 10, male and female, when divided. End of note. And knowing this, the crafty rabbin Kabbalist has made of it a name so secret that he could not divulge it later on without exposing the whole scheme, and thus he was obliged to make it sacred. How close is the identity between Brahma Prajapati and Jehovah Sephiroth, between Brahma Viraj and Jehovah Adam, the Bible and the Puranas compared can alone show. Analyzed and read in the same light, they afford cogent evidence that they are two copies of the same original, made at two periods far distant from each other. Compare once more in relation to this subject Genesis chapter 4 verses 1 and 26 and Manu 1, and they will both yield their meaning. In Manu book 1 verse 32, Brahma, who is also both man and God, and divides his body into male and female, stands in his esoteric meaning as does Jehovah or Adam in the Bible for the symbolical personification of creative and generative power, both divine and human. The Zohar affords still more convincing proof of identity, while some rabbins repeat word for word certain original Puranic expressions. For example, the creation of the world is generally considered in the Brahmanical books to be the lila, delight or sport, the amusement of the Supreme Creator, Vishnu being thus discrete and indiscrete substance, spirit, and time sports like a playful boy in frolics. See Vishnu Purana, chapter 2. Now compare this with what is said in the book Nobeleth Hokmath. The Kabbalists say that the entering into existence of the worlds happens through delight, in that Ein Sof, within brackets, question mark, exclamation mark, rejoiced in itself, and flashed and beamed from itself to itself, which are all called delight, etc. Quoted in Mayer's Kabbalah, page 110. Thus, it is not a curious idea of the Kabbalists, as the author just quoted remarks, but a purely Puranic, Aryan idea. Only, why make of Ein Sof a creator? The divine hermaphrodite is then Brahmavak Viraj, and that of the Semites, or rather the Jews, is Jehovah Cain Abel. Only the heathen were and are more sincere and frank than were the later Israelites and rabbis who undeniably knew the real meaning of their exoteric deity. The Jews regard the name given to them, the Yahudi, as an insult, yet they have, or would have if they only wished it, as undeniable a right to call themselves the ancient Jehovians, as the a-brahmins have to call themselves Brahmins after their national deity, for Jehovah is the generic name of that group or hierarchy of creative planetary angels under whose star their nation has evolved. He is one of the planetary Elohim of the regent group of Saturn. Verse 26 of Genesis chapter 4, when read correctly, would alone give them such a right, for it calls the new race of men sprung from Set and Enos, Jehovah, something quite different from the translation adopted in the Bible. To him also was born a son, Enos. Then began men to call themselves Jah, or Jehovah, to wit, men and women, the lords of creation. One has but to read the above-mentioned verse in the original Hebrew text and by the light of the Kabbalah to find that instead of the worlds, as they now stand translated, it is, "Then began men to call themselves Jehovah," which is the correct translation, and not, "Then began men to call upon the name of the Lord," the latter being a mistranslation, whether deliberate or not. Again, the well-known passage, "I have gotten a man from the Lord," should read, "I have gotten a man, even Jehovah." Note. See Source of Measures, page 227. End of note. Luther translated the passage one way, the Roman Catholics quite differently. Bishop Wordsworth renders it, "Cain, I have gotten." Cain from canity, I have gotten. Luther, "I have gotten a man, even the Lord," Jehovah. And the author of the Source of Measures, "I have measured a man, even Jehovah." The last is the correct rendering because A famous rabbin, a Kabbalist, explained the passage to the writer in precisely this way, and B, because this rendering is identical with that in the secret doctrine of the East with regard to Brahma. In Isis Unveiled, Volume 2, page 264, its sequence, it was explained by the writer that Cain is the son of the Lord, not of Adam. Genesis 4, chapter 1. The Lord is Adam Kadmon, the father of Yod-Keva, Adam Eve, or Jehovah, the son of sinful thought, not the progeny of flesh and blood. Set, on the other hand, is the leader and the progenitor of the races of the earth, for he is the son of Adam, exoterically, but esoterically he is the progeny of Cain and Abel, since Abel or Hebel is a female, the counterpart and female half of the male Cain, and Adam is the collective name for man and woman. Male and female, Sakar va Nakobe, created he them, and called their name Adam. The verses in Genesis from chapters 1 to 5 are purposely mixed up for Kabbalistic reasons. After man of Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, and Enos, son of man of chapter 4, verse 26, after Adam, the first androgyne, after Adam Kadmon, the sexless, the first logos, Adam and Eve once separated, come finally Jehovah Eve, of Cain Jehovah. These represent distinct root races, for millions of years elapsed between them. Hence the Aryan and the Semitic Anthropogenesis are two leaves on the same stem, their respective personifications and symbolic personages standing in relation to each other in this way. 1. The unknowable, referred to in various ways in Rig Vedic verse, such as naught was, called later on a-brahmins. The Ein, nothing, or the Ein Sof of the Kabbalists, and again the Spirit of God that moves upon the face of the waters in Genesis. All these are identical. Moreover, in Genesis chapter 1 verse 2 is placed as verse 1 in the secret Kabbalistic texts, where it is followed by the Elohim creating the heaven and the earth. This deliberate shifting of the order of the verses was necessary for monotheistic and Kabbalistic purposes. Jeremiah's curse against the Elohim, the gods, who have not created the heavens and the earth, chapter 10, verse 11, shows that there were other Elohim who had. 2. The heavenly Manu Swayambhuva, who sprang from Swayambhu Narayana, the self-existent and Adam Kadmon of the Kabbalists, and the androgyne man of Genesis chapter 1 are also identical. 3. Manu Svayambhuva is Brahma, or the Logos, and he is Adam Kadmon, who in Genesis 4, verse 5 separates himself into two halves, male and female, thus becoming Jahuva or Jehovah Eve. As Manu Svayambhuva or Brahma separates himself to become Brahma Viraj and Vak Viraj, male and female, all the rest of the texts and versions being blinds. 4. Vak is the daughter of Brahma and is named Satarupa, the hundred-formed, and Savitri, generatrix, the mother of the gods and of all living. She is identical with Eve, the mother of all the lords or gods or of all living. Besides this, there are many other occult meanings. What is written in Isis, although scattered about and very cautiously expressed at the time, is correct. Explaining esoterically Ezekiel's wheel, Isis Unveiled, Volume 2, page 462, it is said of Jodheva or Jehovah, when the ternary is taken in the beginning of the tetragram, it expresses the divine creation spiritually without any carnal sin. Taken at its opposite end, it expresses the letter. It is feminine. The name of Eva is composed of 3 letters. That of the primitive or heavenly Adam is written with 1 letter, Jod or Yod. Therefore it must not be read Jehovah, but Yeva or Eve. The Adam of the first chapter is the spiritual, therefore pure, androgyne Adam Kadmon. When woman issues from the rib of the second Adam of dust, the pure Virgo is separated and falling into generation, or the downward cycle becomes Scorpio, emblem of sin and matter. While the ascending cycle points to the pure spiritual races, or the 10 pre-diluvian patriarchs, the Prajapatis and Sephiroth are led on by the creative deity itself, who is Adam Kadmon, or Jod-Cheva. Spiritually, the lower one, Jehovah, is that of the terrestrial races, led on by Enoch, or Libra, the 7th, who, because he is half divine, half terrestrial, is said to have been taken by God alive. Enoch, Hermes, and Libra are one. Unquote from Isis Unveiled. This is only one of the several meanings. No need to remind the scholar that Scorpio is the astrological sign of the organs of reproduction. Like the Indian rishis, the patriarchs are all convertible in their numbers as well as interchangeable. According to the subject to which they relate, they become 10, 12, 7, or 5, and even 14, and they have the same esoteric meaning as the Manus or Rishis. Moreover, Jehovah, as may be shown, has a variety of etymologies, but only those are true which are found in the Kabbalah. Yeve is the Old Testament term and was pronounced Yahweh. Inman suggests that it is contracted from the 2 words Yahoyah, Yahoyah, or Yahu is Jah, punctuated. It is a rabbinical caprice to associate it with the name Adoni, which has the same points. It is curious, and indeed hardly conceivable, that the Jews anciently read the name Adoni when they had so many names in which Jehu and Jah and Ea constituted a part. But so it was, and Philobiblus, who gives us the so-called fragment of Sankoniaton, spelt it in Greek letters Yevo, Yavo, or Yevo. Theodore says that the Samaritans pronounced Yava and the Jews Yahu. Professor Gibbs, however, suggests its punctuation thus, Jehu-V, and he cut the Gordian knot of its true occult meaning, for in this last form, as a Hebrew verb, it means he will be. Note, see for comparison, Hosea 12:6, where it is so punctuated. End of note. It was also derived from the Chaldaic verb ewe, eva, or iwa, Eva, to be. And so it was, since from Enosh, the son of man, only were the truly human races to begin and to be as males and females. This statement receives further corroboration inasmuch as Parkhurst makes the verb ewa to mean 1, to fall down, that is, into generation or matter, and 2, to be, to continue, as a race. The aspirate of the word Eva, to be, being Heve, Eve, which is the feminine of Adoni, and the same as Hebe, the Grecian goddess of youth and the Olympian bride of Heracles, makes the name Jehovah appear still more clearly in its primitive double-sexed form. Finding in Sanskrit such syllables as Jah and Yah, for example, Yah, Navi, Ganges, and Jagannatha, Lord of the World, it becomes clear why Mr. Rawlinson is so very confident in his works of an Aryan or Vedic influence on the early mythology of Babylon. Nor is it to be much wondered at that the alleged 10 tribes of Israel disappeared during their captivity period without leaving a trace behind them, when we are informed that the Jews had de facto but 2 tribes, those of Judah and of Levi. The Levites, moreover, were not a tribe at all, but a priestly caste. The descendants have only followed their progenitors, the various patriarchs, into thin sidereal air. There were Brahms and a-brahmins in days of old, truly, and before the first Jew had been born. Every nation held its first god and gods to be androgynes, nor could it be otherwise, since they regarded their distant primeval progenitors, their dual-sexed ancestors, as divine beings and gods, just as do the Chinese to this day. And they were divine in one sense, and also were their first human progeny, the mind-born primitive humanity, which were most assuredly bisexual, as all the more ancient symbols and traditions show. Under the emblematical devices and peculiar phraseology of the priesthood of old lie latent hints of sciences as yet undiscovered during the present cycle. Well acquainted as may be a scholar with the hieratic writing and hieroglyphical system of the Egyptians, he must first of all learn to sift their records. He has to assure himself, compasses and rule in hand, that the picture writing he is examining fits to a line certain fixed geometrical figures, which are the hidden keys to such records, before he ventures on an interpretation. But there are myths which speak for themselves. In this class we may include the double-sexed first creators of every cosmogony, the Greek Zeus, Zen, Aether, and Chtonia, the chaotic earth, and Metis, water, his wives, Osiris and Isis Latona, the former god also representing Aether, the first emanation of the supreme deity, Amun, the primeval source of light, the goddess earth and water again, Mithras, the rock-born god, the symbol of the male mundane fire or the personified primordial light, and Mithra, the fire goddess, at once his mother and his wife, the pure element of fire, the active or male principle, regarded as light and heat in conjunction with earth and water or matter, the female or passive element of cosmical generation. All these are records of the primeval divine hermaphrodite. Next chapter is Stanza 6,